The night was quiet in Nina's little town. The kind of quiet that wrapped around the houses like a soft blanket, tucking everyone in for rest. The windows of the houses glowed faintly with golden light, then dimmed one by one as the world prepared to sleep. But in a small room at the very top of a narrow house, Nina was still awake. She lay on her bed, wide-eyed, listening to the distant hum of crickets and the gentle sigh of the evening wind brushing past her curtains. Nina loved nights like this. There was magic in them, though no one else seemed to notice. When the world grew still, her imagination grew louder. Tonight, she whispered to herself, would be different. Something in her heart told her so. She sat up, hugging her pillow close, and gazed out of her window. The sky above stretched endlessly, velvet dark and sprinkled with stars. But these stars were not like the ordinary pinpoints of light she usually saw. They seemed alive, twinkling, winking, as though they were whispering secrets only she could hear. A soft glow spilled across her room, not from the lamp on her bedside table, but from the sky itself. She leaned forward, her forehead pressing against the cool glass of the window. One star larger and brighter than the rest seemed to lean closer to her, pulsing like a heartbeat. Nina felt a flutter inside her chest, a tugging sensation, as though the star was calling her name. Nina. She imagined it saying, in a voice softer than the rustling of leaves. Her eyelids grew heavy. She wasn't sure if she was still awake or if the dream had already begun. The line between the two blurred as the star's light grew warmer, softer, until it filled her whole room. She blinked once, twice, and suddenly, the floor beneath her bed seemed to dissolve. Her walls melted away, and she was floating. The stars' glow wrapped around her like wings, lifting her higher and higher. She gasped, but there was no fearingly wonder. The air carried her gently, and when she looked down, her little house grew smaller and smaller until it was no more than a toy resting on a quilt of fields and streets. "Am I dreaming?" Nina whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. If it was a dream, it was the most beautiful one she had ever known. The cool night breeze brushed against her cheeks, and she stretched her arms wide, as though she could fly. Her heart swelled with joy, and she laughed softly into the starlit sky. Ahead of her, the great glowing star pulsed brighter, as though guiding her somewhere. It was a field trip, but not the kind that came with school buses and backpacks. This was a field trip of dreams, a flying journey to places she had never seen. Places that only revealed themselves to children who dared to dream beyond the ordinary. And so, with the whole earth sleeping quietly below her, Nina began her dreamy flying field trip, her heart wide, open to whatever wonders the night would bring. She didn't know where the star was taking her. She didn't know what magical sights awaited. All she knew was that she felt safe, calm, and free. For the first time in forever, Nina wasn't just looking at the stars, she was among them. The story had only just begun. The stars' light carried Nina higher and higher, until she rose beyond the rooftops, beyond the hills, and into the vast open skies. She expected to find only endless darkness above, but instead, she saw something extraordinary. Just beyond the thin veil of night clouds was a meadow floating in the sky itself. It stretched out endlessly, resting on layers of soft, glowing mist. The flowers there shimmered faintly as though dipped in starlight. their petals glowing in colors Nina had no name for silvery blues. Soft lilacs, golden white blossoms that pulsed gently, like they were breathing. Nina's bare feet touched the ground, but it wasn't ground at all. The clouds felt warm and springy beneath her, like walking on the fluffiest pillow in the world. She bent down and pressed her hands into the mist, laughing softly when it rippled like water, but held her up like earth. The air smelled sweet like honey and lavender, with a hint of rain. Fireflies floated lazily through the meadow, though these weren't ordinary fireflies. Their lights flickered in patterns, swirling together until they formed gentle shapes in the air circles, spirals, even a faint outline of wings. Nina spun slowly, taking it all in. "Is this real?" she whispered to herself. A voice, soft and melodic, answered her. "As real as dreams are meant to be." Nina turned, her eyes wide. Standing among the glowing flowers was a figure, not quite human, not quite star. It looked like a child made of pure light, with hair like streaming silver threads and eyes that reflected entire galaxies. The figure smiled, and when it spoke again, its voice was as soothing as the wind. "I am Leora," the figure said gently. "A guide for dreamers who find their way into the fields above the clouds." Nina repeated softly, tasting the name on her tongue. "You've been invited," Leora explained, "on a journey few ever take. This field trip is not to learn about school subjects, but about wonder. It is for those who still believe in magic when the world tells them not to. That is why you are here, Nina." Nina's heart fluttered with warmth. She didn't know how Leora knew her name, but in this place it felt natural. Everything felt natural, even though it was impossible. "Where will we go?" Nina asked. Leora smiled and reached out a glowing hand. "Wherever the night chooses. Tonight you will see the hidden wonders of the earth, the things that live between dreams and waking. You will fly with the winds, speak to creatures of light, and walk in places where the ordinary rules of the world no longer apply." Nina placed her hand in Leora, and instantly a rush of calm flowed through her. It wasn't just comfort, it was trust, as though she had known this guide forever. Above them, the sky shimmered again. The star that had led Nina here pulsed brighter, then released a trail of silver dust that formed a path stretching far beyond the meadow. It glittered like a river in the sky, curving gently toward the horizon. "This," Leora said, pointing toward the glowing path, "is where your journey begins." Nina took a deep breath, her eyes shining with excitement and peace. She was ready. Together, hand in hand, they stepped onto the starry path, leaving behind the meadow of glowing flowers. Ahead lay the unknown, but it was a kind of unknown that promised beauty, wonder, and the kind of magic only dreams could hold. The flying field trip was only just beginning. The path of starlight curved gracefully through the sky, leading Nina and Leora onward. Each step they took sent ripples of silver dust floating into the air, drifting around them like glowing snowflakes. The night was hushed, yet the silence carried with it a promise that something extraordinary waited just ahead. Before long, the path widened and Nina gasped. Spread out before her was a vast forest, but unlike any forest she had ever seen on Earth. The trees were tall and slender, their trunks glowing faintly with golden veins that pulsed like gentle heartbeats. Their branches stretched high into the sky, draped in leaves that shimmered with soft hues of emerald, sapphire, and violet. Some leaves were translucent, catching the starlight and scattering it in little rainbows that danced across the misty ground. As Nina and Leora stepped beneath the towering canopy, the air shifted. It grew warmer, softer, carrying with it a melody. At first, Nina thought it was only the breeze, but then she realized the trees were whispering. Each rustle of leaves carried words, not in a language she knew, but in sounds that felt deeply familiar. It was like listening to a lullaby sung long ago, one that spoke not to her ears, but to her heart. Nina slowed her steps, tilting her head. There, talking. Leora nodded, smiling gently. These are the whispering trees. They remember every dream ever dreamt, every story ever told. When the night is calm, they share them with those who listen. Nina closed her eyes and let the whispers wash over her. She could almost make sense of them, gentle tales of children chasing fireflies, of mothers humming babies to sleep, of laughter echoing across summer fields. Every whisper carried warmth. Every word seemed to glow with love. She opened her eyes again, her heart swelling with something she couldn't name. "It feels like home," she whispered. "That is what they wish for you to feel," Leora replied. The whispering trees remind us that no dream is ever lost. Even the ones we forget upon waking still live here, in their branches, safe and eternal. As they walked deeper, the whispers grew into a soft chorus. Firefly lights danced between the trunks, and glowing vines curled upward like ribbons of light. Suddenly, one of the trees leaned gently toward Nina, its branches lowering until a single glowing leaf drifted down into her hands. She held it carefully, its glow pulsing like a tiny heartbeat. The moment it touched her skin, she saw a vision, herself as a little girl, running barefoot through a sunlit meadow, laughing with joy. She remembered the moment instantly, though she hadn't thought about it in years. A tear formed in her eye, but it was not a sad tear. It was the kind of tear that comes when your heart is touched in the softest way. "The trees have given you a memory," Leora said softly. "They gift pieces of ourselves back to us, so we may never forget who we are." Nina tucked the glowing leaf close to her chest, warmth filling her from the inside out. She felt lighter, calmer, like a part of her soul had been gently mended. The forest path opened wider, and far ahead she could see the shimmering star road continue beyond the trees, stretching toward new wonders. But before they left, Nina turned one last time, gazing up at the canopy of glowing leaves, and whispered, "Thank you." The trees rustled in response, their whispers rising like a gentle farewell, and with that, Nina and Leora stepped out of the forest of whispering trees, carrying its gift of peace with them as they continued their dreamy flying field trip into the unknown night. The path of starlight curved gracefully through the sky, leading Nina and Leora onward. Each step they took sent ripples of silver dust floating into the air, drifting around them like glowing snowflakes. The night was hushed, yet the silence carried with it a promise that something extraordinary waited just ahead. Before long, the path widened and Nina gasped. Spread out before her was a vast forest, but unlike any forest she had ever seen on Earth. The trees were tall and slender, their trunks glowing faintly with golden veins that pulsed like gentle heartbeats. Their branches stretched high into the sky, draped in leaves that shimmered with soft hues of emerald, sapphire, and violet. Some leaves were translucent, catching the starlight and scattering it in little rainbows that danced across the misty ground. As Nina and Leora stepped beneath the towering canopy, the air shifted. It grew warmer, softer, carrying with it a melody. At first, Nina thought it was only the breeze, but then she realized the trees were whispering. Each rustle of leaves carried words, not in a language she knew, but in sounds that felt deeply familiar. It was like listening to a lullaby sung long ago, one that spoke not to her ears, but to her heart. Nina slowed her steps, tilting her head. There, talking. Leora nodded, smiling gently. These are the whispering trees. They remember every dream ever dreamt, every story ever told. When the night is calm, they share them with those who listen. Nina closed her eyes and let the whispers wash over her. She could almost make sense of them, gentle tales of children chasing fireflies, of mothers humming babies to sleep, of laughter echoing across summer fields. Every whisper carried warmth. Every word seemed to glow with love. She opened her eyes again, her heart swelling with something she couldn't name. "It feels like home," she whispered. "That is what they wish for you to feel," Leora replied. "The whispering trees remind us that no dream is ever lost. Even the ones we forget upon waking still live here, in their branches, safe and eternal." As they walked deeper, the whispers grew into a soft chorus. Firefly lights danced between the trunks, and glowing vines curled upward like ribbons of light. Suddenly, one of the trees leaned gently toward Nina, its branches lowering until a single glowing leaf drifted down into her hands. She held it carefully, its glow pulsing like a tiny heartbeat. The moment it touched her skin, she saw a vision, herself as a little girl, running barefoot through a sunlit meadow, laughing with joy. She remembered the moment instantly, though she hadn't thought about it in years. A tear formed in her eye, but it was not a sad tear. It was the kind of tear that comes when your heart is touched in the softest way. "The trees have given you a memory," Leora said softly. "They gift pieces of ourselves back to us, so we may never forget who we are." Nina tucked the glowing leaf close to her chest, warmth filling her from the inside out. She felt lighter, calmer, like a part of her soul had been gently mended. The forest path opened wider, and far ahead she could see the shimmering star road continue beyond the trees, stretching toward new wonders. But before they left, Nina turned one last time, gazing up at the canopy of glowing leaves, and whispered, "Thank you." The trees rustled in response, their whispers rising like a gentle farewell, and with that, Nina and Leora stepped out of the forest of whispering trees, carrying its gift of peace with them as they continued their dreamy flying field trip into the unknown night. The starlit boat glided onward, cutting gently through the glowing tides of the ocean of stars. For a while, Nina drifted in near silence, lulled by the soft rhythm of the waves and the faint song of the dream creatures swimming below. The quiet was so complete, so perfect, that when a new light appeared on the horizon, it felt like the soft rising of dawn. Nina sat up slowly, her eyes widening. The light grew brighter, not from the sun or the stars, but from something far more wondrous. Rising from the surface of the ocean, high above the clouds and mist, was a city unlike any Nina had ever seen. Its towers shimmered like crystal, glowing faintly with colors that shifted as the eye wandered pearl white, gentle gold, deep sapphire. Bridges arched gracefully between floating platforms, each lined with lanterns that glowed softly, like candles burning in the night. Streets paved with silver mist wound upward in spirals, leading to spires that reached into the heavens. The entire city floated silently above the tides, as if held up by dreams themselves. And as they drew nearer, Nina saw tiny lights moving across the bridges and balcony shapes of people, dreamers wandering calmly, their outlines faint but luminous, like the glow of fireflies. "Is it real?" Nina breathed. Leora's eyes sparkled. "This is the city of dreams. Every night, countless dreamers walk here. Some only for a moment, some for an entire night. Few remember it when they wake, but their hearts carry the peace of this place with them always." The boat slowed at the edge of the city, brushing gently against a glowing dock. Nina stepped off, her feet meeting a pathway that shimmered like glass, but felt soft as velvet. The air here was different, gentler, thicker with warmth, like a blanket that wrapped around her shoulders. A faint bell chimed in the distance, not loud, but enough to steady her heartbeat in perfect rhythm. Nina looked around in wonder. "Who are they?" she asked, pointing to the glowing figures strolling the bridges. "They are dreamers," Leora explained, her voice soft as ever. "Children, grown-ups, even those who lived long ago. Here, time doesn't matter. People walk together in peace. They explore, they rest, they remember who they are beneath all the noise of their waking lives." As they walked deeper into the city, Nina noticed more details. A group of glowing children sat in a circle, listening to a storyteller whose voice rose and fell like a lullaby. A pair of older figures walked hand in hand across a bridge, smiling as though no weight in the world could touch them here. Musicians sat at the edge of a fountain, their instruments woven from moonlight, playing melodies that seemed to weave into the air itself. At the center of the city stood a great fountain, its water glowing silver, splashing upward and drifting down like liquid stars. Dreamers gathered there, dipping their hands into the water, then pressing it to their hearts. Each time they did, their glow grew brighter, steadier, as if the fountain renewed them. Nina's eyes widened. "What is that?" "That," Leora said, guiding her closer, "is the fountain of memory. When dreamers touch its waters, they remember something they had forgotten, something beautiful, something important. It might be a laugh they once shared, a promise they once made, or even just a moment when they felt truly alive. The fountain gives it back to them." Nina leaned forward and dipped her fingers into the glowing water. The moment it touched her skin, warmth spread through her whole body. A vision blossomed in her mind, herself sitting under a blanket fort she had built as a child, reading a book by flashlight. She could hear her own giggles, the feeling of safety. The way the world outside didn't matter, because inside that little fort, she felt infinite. She gasped softly. "I forgot about that, but your heart remembered," Leora said. Nina smiled faintly, pressing the glowing water to her chest. She felt lighter, calmer, as though a piece of herself she hadn't even known was missing had just been returned. They wandered deeper through the city. At one plaza, dreamers floated just above the ground, moving gracefully through the air as though dancing with the stars. At another, glowing birds flew overhead, their songs scattering trails of golden notes that lingered in the air like falling petals. Everywhere Nina looked, she saw peace, joy, and wonder, never fear, never pain. As they reached the highest point of the city, Nina stopped to look back. From here, she could see the whole city glowing against the ocean below. Every tower like a candle burning against the endless night. The dreamers moved like stars themselves, filling the city with life. "It's so beautiful," Nina whispered, her voice trembling with awe. "This is what dreams are meant to be," Leora said gently. "A reminder that deep within every heart is light waiting to shine for a while." They stood in silence, letting the city's calm seep into their bones. Nina didn't want to leave, but she could feel the starlit path calling again, tugging at her gently, guiding her toward the next wonder. Leora touched her shoulder softly. "The field trip continues, but this city will stay in you, even when you wake." Nina nodded, her eyes lingering one last time on the glowing towers and bridges. Then, with a deep breath, she stepped back onto the silver path, carrying the city of dreams in her heart as they journeyed onward into the vast night sky. The silver path stretched on, carrying Nina and Leora away from the floating city. For a while, they walked in silence, the gentle hum of the dream world surrounding them. Nina felt as though the calm of the city still lingered in her chest, a soft glow that made her steps lighter, her heart steadier. Ahead, the horizon began to change. Where once the starlit ocean had stretched endlessly, now a vast silhouette rose into view, dark shapes, jagged and enormous, reaching high into the heavens. As they drew closer, the shapes glimmered faintly, until Nina saw what they truly were: mountains, but not like any she had ever seen on Earth. These mountains shimmered as though their peaks had been carved from crystal. Their sides glowed softly with veins of light, like molten silver running just beneath their stone. Snow capped the highest peaks, yet the snow did not look cold. Instead, it glowed faintly, radiating warmth, casting halos of golden light into the night. Nina gasped softly. "They look alive." "They are," Leora replied gently. "These are the mountains of eternal glow. They do not belong to day or night, nor to any single dreamer. They have stood here since the first dream was dreamt, and they will remain until the last star fades. They are the keepers of silence." The closer they came, the more Nina felt the stillness. Not emptiness, never emptiness, but a vast, sacred quiet, the kind that made her want to lower her voice and move slowly. The air was cool, crisp, and smelled faintly of pine and fresh snow. Each breath Nina took felt like a sip of something pure, something cleansing. The path led them onto a wide plateau at the foot of the first mountain. The ground shimmered like smooth stone, glowing faintly beneath their feet. Above, the mountain rose, impossibly high, its slopes glowing with lines of silver light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the stars overhead. Nina tilted her head back, her eyes wide. "It's taller than the sky." Leora's smile was soft. "In dreams, there is no end to how high things may arise. These mountains remind us of that truth." As they climbed, the quiet deepened, but within the quiet came subtle sounds, the faint rush of wind curling around the cliffs, the soft drip of glowing streams trickling down the mountainsides, the distant call of birds with wings made of light. The sound was so gentle, so natural, that Nina felt it more than she heard it, as though it vibrated within her chest. Halfway up the slope, they came across a river. It wasn't like the rivers Nina had seen before. Its water flowed slow and steady, shimmering with liquid starlight, and every pebble beneath its surface glowed faintly like jewels. She crouched by the bank and dipped her fingers into the water. The liquid clung to her skin, glowing softly before fading into warmth. "It feels like it's singing," she whispered. Leora nodded. "The rivers here carry the songs of every dreamer's breath. The mountains hold them safe, so they may never be lost." They continued upward, and as they climbed, the view opened. Below them stretched the vastness of the dream world, the glowing forest, the ocean of stars, and even the faint gleam of the city of dreams far in the distance. The sight took Nina's breath away, but above them the peaks still called, their glow pulsing stronger as if urging them higher. At last they reached a great ledge near the tallest peak. From here the mountain seemed to touch the very edge of the heavens. A great stone arch rose from the ledge, carved naturally, as though shaped by time itself. Beneath the arch was a pool of still glowing water, perfectly reflecting the stars above. "This," Leora whispered, "is the mirror pool." Nina stepped closer, peering into the shimmering surface. For a moment she saw only the reflection of the night sky, but then, slowly, her own image appeared, not just herself as she was, but as she had been through different moments of her life. She saw herself as a little girl, her hair wild from playing in the wind. She saw herself a little older, sitting quietly, dreaming. She saw herself as she was now, standing tall and brave in the middle of an impossible dream. Her throat tightened. "It shows me. It shows who you are," Leora said softly, "and who you have always been. Here, nothing is hidden. The mountains reflect truth, but gently like light in still water." Nina gazed longer, her heart swelling with emotions she could barely name. There was no judgment in the reflection, only acceptance, only love. She felt whole. When she finally stepped back, she felt lighter, as though she had laid down something heavy she hadn't even realized she was carrying. Above them, the tallest peak shimmered brighter than before, sending a beam of light into the sky. Nina shielded her eyes, but the glow was not harsh. It was warm, welcoming. It seemed to say, "You may go forward now." Leora touched her shoulder gently. "The mountains give their blessing. They remind us that silence holds more power than noise, and that stillness can be more moving than movement. Remember this, Nina." Nina nodded slowly, her heart calm, her spirit steady. She turned her gaze outward to the endless sky beyond the glowing peaks, where the silver path appeared once more, stretching toward their next destination. Hand in hand, she and Leora descended gently, leaving the mountains of eternal glow behind, but carrying their wisdom forever within her. The silver path curved downward, leading Nina and Leora away from the glowing mountains. As they walked, the air grew softer, warmer, filled with a faint humming sound, like the low, steady rhythm of wings. The world around them began to dim, not with darkness, but with a hushed twilight, as though the stars themselves had drawn closer, waiting. Nina's steps slowed, her eyes widening. Ahead stretched a vast valley, cradled between gentle hills that shimmered faintly in silver blue. But it was not the hills that drew her breath away. It was the lights. Countless tiny lights flickered in the valley, floating gently through the air. At first, Nina thought they were stars that had fallen to earth, drifting in lazy patterns. but as her eyes adjusted, she saw them clearly. Thousands upon thousands of glowing fireflies, their golden green light pulsing softly, rising and falling as if the entire valley was breathing. Her heart skipped. It's alive. Leora's voice was no louder than a whisper. This is the valley of eternal fireflies. Here, every light is a memory. Every flicker belongs to a moment lived, loved, or dreamed. Nina stepped forward slowly, her sandals brushing against the soft grass that glowed faintly beneath her feet. The air was warm, sweet, with the faint scent of jasmine and night-blooming flowers. The sound of wings filled the silencer delicate chorus, soft and soothing. Like the faint rustle of silk, she raised her hand, and a firefly drifted down to land on her finger. Its tiny body glowed, pulsing with light, and as it blinked, Nina suddenly felt something stir inside her chest, a memory. She saw herself in her grandmother's kitchen, much younger, her legs dangling from a wooden chair as the smell of fresh bread filled the air. Her grandmother laughed, humming softly as she kneaded the dough, and little Nina had giggled without reason, filled with nothing but joy. The memory faded gently, leaving her breathless. "That was me," she whispered. Leora nodded, her eyes reflecting the valley's glow. Every firefly carries a piece of a dreamer's heart. Some are happy moments, some are sad, but all are precious. The valley keeps them safe, so that nothing is ever truly lost. They walked deeper into the valley, surrounded by the slow dance of lights. Each flicker seemed to tell a story to children chasing each other through a field. A mother holding her newborn close, an old man sitting by a lake watching the sunset, a traveler stepping off a train into the arms of someone they loved. Nina's chest ached, but not with sorrow. It was a deep, full ache, the kind that comes from feeling everything all at once, the joy, the loss, the beauty of living. At the center of the valley stood a great tree, its branches stretched wide, glowing faintly silver, and from every branch hung strands of light like strings of lanterns, each one pulsing softly in rhythm with the fireflies below. "The tree of remembering," Leora said, guiding Nina closer. "Every dreamer who passes through this valley leaves a piece of their light here. It is how the valley grows brighter with each passing age." Nina touched the bark. It was warm, humming faintly, alive. She felt a gentle pull inside her, as though the tree was asking her to share something. Closing her eyes, she thought of the day she first learned to ride her bicycle. The rush of freedom as the wind hit her face, the laughter echoing from her parents as they cheered her on. The moment had seemed small then, but now held in her heart. It was radiant. When she opened her eyes, a small glow drifted from her chest, rising like a spark into the tree. It settled among the branches, joining the thousands of others, pulsing gently. Nina exhaled slowly. "It feels like I gave a gift." "You did," Leora said softly, "and in return, the valley will keep it safe for eternity. No memory here is ever lost, no moment ever wasted." They stood beneath the tree for what felt like hours, though time seemed to dissolve in the valley's embrace. Fireflies drifted around them, brushing against Nina's arms and cheeks like tiny blessings. Some brought laughter, others brought tears, but all of them carried warmth. At last, the silver path appeared once more, winding out of the valley and up toward the stars. Nina turned one last time, her eyes lingering on the lights dancing among the grasses. The glowing tree, standing tall, eternal. "I'll remember this forever," she whispered. "You don't have to," Leora said gently. "The valley remembers for you." Hand in hand, they stepped back onto the path, leaving the valley of eternal fireflies glowing behind them, its lights pulsing gently like the heartbeat of the world. The silver path shimmered brighter than ever before, arching upward into the sky itself. Nina felt her steps grow lighter with each pace, as though the gravity of the earth no longer held her fully. Around her, the stars seemed closer, so close that their light brushed against her skin like warm snowflakes, soft and fleeting. Hand in hand with Leora, she climbed until the world below was no more than a faint glow, like a memory resting quietly beneath her feet. The air here was neither cool nor warm, but perfectly balanced, weightless, as though it belonged to no season at all. Ahead, the path widened into a great bridge made of pure light. It stretched forward endlessly, suspended in the heavens. And at the far end of the bridge, shimmering softly against the eternal night, stood a palace. Nina stopped, her breath catching in her throat. The palace looked as though it had been woven from the stars themselves. Towers of crystal spiraled upward, crowned with domes that shimmered with golden fire. Its walls were translucent, glowing faintly like moonstone, and from every arch and window spilled threads of light that cascaded downward like waterfalls. The entire palace pulsed with a steady rhythm, as though it were breathing along with the universe. "It's beautiful," Nina whispered. Leora's eyes softened. "This is the celestial palace. Few dreamers ever reach it. It is not a place of answers, but of quiet knowing. What you feel here matters more than what you see." They stepped forward, the bridge carrying them closer. With each step, Nina felt a hum beneath her feet, a low vibration, steady and soothing, like the distant echo of a heartbeat. By the time they reached the gates, the sound resonated through her entire body, calming her breath, slowing her thoughts. The gates opened soundlessly, swinging wide as if welcoming them home. Inside, the palace glowed with colors too soft to be named, shades of silver, pearl, lavender, and faint gold that shifted and blended as they walked. Columns stretched impossibly high, carved with patterns of stars that shifted like constellations coming to life. The floor was made of glassy stone, perfectly reflecting the ceiling above, so that every step Nina took felt like walking across the sky. The silence was immense, but it was not empty. Within the silence was music too subtle for the ear, a harmony felt deep in the chest, as if the palace itself was singing. They entered a great hall, where the walls opened into arches, revealing the stars beyond. Here, the air shimmered with drifting motes of light, tiny sparks that hovered and glowed, swirling slowly like dancers moving to an unseen melody. "What are they?" Nina asked softly. "Fragments of dreams," Leora answered. "The palace gathers them, pieces of wonder, hope, love, and longing. They linger here, shining for all who walk through these halls." Nina reached out, and one of the lights drifted into her palm. It was warm, feather-light, glowing softly against her skin. When she closed her eyes, she felt a vision unfurl inside her, a child's laughter echoing as they twirled beneath a summer rain. The warmth of two hands finding each other after years apart. The quiet joy of watching dawn break over a still lake. The feelings poured through her, overwhelming in their simplicity and beauty. When she opened her eyes, the light floated gently away, returning to the air. Tears shimmered at the corners of her eyes. "It's so much," Leora touched her shoulder. "Dreams do not vanish. They collect here, waiting to remind us of what we sometimes forget, that every small joy is a piece of eternity." They moved onward, deeper into the palace. Each room was a wonder. One chamber was filled with pools of liquid starlight, where ripples created symphonies of color and sound. Another chamber was lined with mirrors, each reflecting not the body, but the spirit, glimpses of courage, kindness, and quiet strength that dwell within all who pass through. Finally, they reached the heart of the palace, a circular chamber with no roof. Above, the sky opened endlessly, stars spinning slowly, galaxies flowing like rivers of light. In the center of the chamber stood a great crystal, rising higher than Nina herself, glowing with a steady golden pulse. Nina approached, her steps reverent. She felt warmth radiating from the crystal, not on her skin, but within her soul. The glow pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, until for a moment she could not tell if the light came from the crystal or from herself. "It feels alive," she whispered. "It is," Leora said softly. "This crystal is the heart of the palace. It reflects the harmony of the universe. Stand here long enough, and you may feel yourself dissolve into its rhythm, becoming one with everything that is." Nina closed her eyes and let the glow wash over her. She felt her thoughts grow quieter, her worries fading like shadows at dawn. In their place bloomed peace, vast, endless peace, stretching wider than the sky itself. She felt connected to everything: the mountains, the forests, the fireflies, the rivers, the stars. She felt herself as a thread in a tapestry, small yet essential, shining just as brightly as all the rest. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks, not from sorrow, but from release. She whispered softly, "I never knew peace could feel this big." Leora smiled gently, her voice no more than a breath. "Now you do." When at last Nina stepped back, the glow of the crystal remained within her, a quiet warmth she knew would never fade. The palace doors opened once more, the silver path gleaming beyond. It was time to continue. Nina turned one last time, gazing at the shimmering halls, the drifting dreamlights, the towering crystal that pulsed with the heartbeat of the universe. She bowed her head in gratitude, then followed Leora out onto the bridge of light. Behind them, the celestial palace stood eternal, glowing softly in the endless night, waiting for the next dreamer who might one day arrive. The silver path shimmered ahead, carrying Nina and Leora away from the celestial palace. For a long while they walked in silence, the glow of the heart of the palace still warm in Nina's chest. She felt calmer, steadier, as though every step was guided not by her feet, but by something deeper inside her. The path dipped gently, and the air shifted warmer, now filled with a fragrance so soft and sweet it seemed to wrap around her like a blanket. Nina inhaled deeply, and her heart quickened. The scent was like lavender, like roses, like jasmine blooming in the still of night. They reached the crest of a hill, and as Nina gazed down, her breath caught. The land before them stretched farther than she could see, rolling gently into the horizon, and upon it bloomed flowers, millions upon millions of blossoms, glowing faintly beneath the moonlight. Their colors shifted with every blink, pale blues, soft pinks, golden whites, silvers that gleamed like starlight. Together they formed a living ocean of petals, swaying gently as though moved by the quiet rhythm of a dream. At the very center of the meadow hung the moon, not high above, as Nina had always seen it, but low, so low it felt as though she could reach it if she dared. Its glow was soft and steady, bathing every petal in silver light. "The Meadow of Blossoms, without end," Leora whispered. "Every flower here is a dream once wished beneath the moon. Some blossomed long ago, some just now. Together they form this meadow, eternal and alive." Nina stepped forward, her feet sinking into the grass that glowed faintly green beneath the blooms. Fireflies flitted gently here too, their golden light weaving among the petals. But unlike the valley she had left behind, the fireflies here did not carry memories. Instead, they carried whispers. She leaned closer to one glowing blossom, and as its petals brushed against her fingers, she heard a voice, soft as a sigh, whispering a wish. "I hope to see them again." Nina's heart stilled. She moved to another flower, its pale blue petals glowing faintly, and when she touched it, another whisper rose. "Let this pain fade with time." Each flower, she realized, carried a dream, a longing, a hope sent into the night. And here they grew into beauty, no longer fleeting words, lost to silence, but blossoms eternal, glowing forever beneath the gentle moon. The further Nina and Leora walked, the more the meadow came alive. The petals swayed, brushing softly against Nina's hands and arms, their whispers weaving together into a gentle chorus. None of the voices were loud, none demanded attention. They were as soft as breath, a lullaby of countless dreamers blending into harmony. Nina paused, her chest tightening with wonder. So many wishes, so many hearts. Every soul who looks up at the moon gives a little piece of themselves to it, and the moon, in kindness, plants those pieces here. Not every dream will come true in waking life, but in the meadow none are lost. They grow into beauty. As they walked, the flowers shifted subtly around them, creating winding trails of glowing petals, as though the meadow itself wished to guide them. At times, the blossoms opened wider as Nina passed, releasing faint sparkles that drifted into the air like falling stars. Eventually, they came upon a small clearing where the flowers formed a perfect circle beneath the low-hanging moon. In the center of the circle lay a single blossom larger than all the rest. Its petals were pure silver, glowing brighter than starlight, and its stem pulsed faintly as though alive with a heartbeat. "The heart blossom," Leora said softly. "It blooms for every dreamer who finds their way here." Nina knelt before it, her hands trembling slightly. She reached out, and as her fingertips brushed the petals, warmth surged into her chest. Her breath caught. She saw herself walking through the valley of fireflies, laughing as the lights danced around her. She saw the mountains of eternal glow, the mirror pool reflecting her truest self. She saw the celestial palace, the crystal heart beating in rhythm with her soul. And she saw herself standing here in the meadow, glowing softly beneath the moon, no longer a visitor but a part of the dream. Her eyes filled with tears. "It's me. The meadow has received you," Leora said gently. "Your wish, your dream, it will live here, blooming forever." Nina closed her eyes and whispered her dream, a simple one, but true. let me always carry this peace, so I may share it with the world. The heart blossom glowed brighter, and a single silver petal lifted gently into the air, drifting upward until it merged with the moonlight. Nina felt warmth spill through her, steady and endless, as though her dream had already taken root. When she opened her eyes again, the meadow swayed softly, petals shimmering in silver and gold. The whispers of wishes surrounded her, not as strangers now, but as companions. She knew she carried a piece of them with her, and they carried a piece of her in return. Leora placed a hand on her shoulder, smiling softly. The path waits. Nina nodded, wiping the gentle tears from her cheeks. She turned toward the silver path, glowing faintly as it wound out of the meadow, stretching toward the horizon as they stepped away. The blossoms seemed to lean after them, swaying gently as if bidding farewell. The moon glowed steadily overhead, cradling the meadow in eternal light. Nina carried the sound of whispers with her as she woke, the song of countless wishes blooming forever beneath the endless night. Titha, silver path, stretched ahead, glowing softly beneath Nina's feet. She and Leora walked in silence, their hands still linked, the warmth of the Meadow of Blossoms still resting in Nina's chest. Every step was unhurried, as though the path itself wanted to give them time, time to breathe, time to feel, time to remember. The whispers of the blossoms lingered in her ears, blending with the faint hum of the Crystal Palace, the shimmer of the Firefly Valley, the glow of the mountains. Every place she had seen was now inside her, stitched into her memory like stars stitched into the night. But slowly the air began to change again. The deep dream night around them softened, grew thinner, like a veil being lifted. The silver glow of the path began to dim, not fading away but blending into something warmer, something familiar. Nina's eyes fluttered. She blinked, and for a moment she thought she saw her own bedroom walls glowing faintly, overlapping with the dream's sky. The stars above seemed to dissolve into the quiet shapes of her ceiling. Leora turned to her with a smile that was both gentle and proud. "It is time, Nina." Nina's chest tightened. Already, dream journeys are not endless. They stay with you just long enough to give you what you need. But don't be afraid. Leora squeezed her hand. Nothing you saw tonight will leave you. The fireflies, the mountains, the mirror pool, the celestial palace, the meadow of blossoms, they live inside you now. Whenever you need them, close your eyes, and they will answer. Nina bit her lip. "Will I see you again?" The silver owl's eyes gleamed, deep and kind. "Of course. I am part of your dreaming heart, and as long as dreams live within you, I will never be far." Nina nodded, though her throat felt tight. She wanted to hold on to the meadow, the palace, the whispering blossoms. She wanted the path to stretch forever, but she felt the weight of her bed beneath her, the softness of her blanket brushing her skin, the real world gently calling her back. The silver path narrowed, becoming just a thread of light. Leora's wings shimmered faintly, feathers glowing like the last sparks of a fire. Nina turned one last time. Behind her, she thought she saw it, all the meadow glowing silver, the palace pulsing with light, the valley of fireflies flickering like stars caught in a jar. A dream universe, vast and endless, all watching her with gentle affection. She raised her hand in farewell, whispering, "Thank you." The dreamland shimmered like water touched by a breeze. And then slowly, sweetly it dissolved. Nina opened her eyes. Her room was quiet, bathed in pale moonlight drifting through the window. The shadows of the curtains swayed gently on the walls. Her bed was warm, the pillow soft beneath her cheek. For a moment she lay still, listening to her own breathing. The dream still clung to her skin, like the warmth of the sun after stepping inside. She could almost feel the grass of the meadow under her fingertips, hear the whispers of the blossoms calling out in soft voices. She touched her chest. It felt warm, steady, glowing faintly from within. "I'll remember," she whispered into the quiet. Her eyes grew heavy once more. But this time, the heaviness was not from the dream carrying her away. It was the deep, peaceful weight of rest, of safety, of knowing she was held. She thought of the heart blossom, its silver petal rising to the moon. She thought of her wish that she might always carry peace and share it with the world. The memory wrapped around her like a blanket, as real as the one tucked under her chin. The world outside her window was silent. The moon watched over her, just as it had in the dream, and as Nina drifted, her breathing slowing, her heart steady, she felt something new, a quiet promise, the promise that dreams are not just things that vanish with morning light. They are seeds, planted deep, that bloom in the heart even when the eyes are open. Nina's last thought before sleep claimed her again was simple, soft, and full of love. "I'll keep the dream alive." And with that, she surrendered to rest, peaceful, warm, and endless. As the night carried her gently into sleep,